Thank you very much, Bhaskar. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope this will be a little bit informative and fun, and I can guarantee you it's probably going to be a little bit controversial for some, and that's fine. I think sometimes in our industry we need to, be a little bit controversial in terms of trying to expand our horizons and think about who it is, who we are, and what we do. And there really is something to be said about why are, some folks perhaps a little more successful than others. Bhaskar had provided some interesting statistics as a lead in to this particular webinar that I think are very interesting in terms of those who graduate, to certain levels in the industry that we happen to serve. And I think this is really kind of oriented towards that representation. And will provide some guidance, hopefully, in terms of how each of us individually who have aspirations to advance will be able to do it by honing certain capabilities. I don't want to say skills because that's not what we're talking about. Certain capabilities that I think are essential to being, part of an elite group in the proposal industry. I have here a nice little quote that, hey, there are people who make things happen. And that's the part I want you to pay attention to as we go through this, because it's the people who make things happen who ultimately, at the end of the day, make a difference in their organizations and in their professions. And it's not everybody who really does that. And so I think if you have those types of aspirations, this will help you get on the path to being one of those people who actually makes things happen and not watching or wondering. And so let's kind of get moving with this. There will be time at the end to ask questions. I am not good at monitoring the chat function. If you have a question and you put it in the chat, please encourage Bhaskar to answer, to ask me the question, and we'll go from there, because I'm just not real good at managing that chat function. Okay. Proposal manager success. One of the things that we kind of need to talk about is, what are some measures of success that interest us and that we really should be paying attention to. Now, I'm kind of single-threaded on this idea of winning. I think it is the number one criterion in terms of establishing who is in fact an elite proposal manager, because if we're not winning business, we're not really contributing significantly to the status of our organization, nor to the revenue and profit goals. And some people I know are going to find that to be a little bit controversial and say, well, winning is not the only thing by which we should judge, an individual's capability. And I also believe that that is true. However, if you're not winning in terms of your proposals, there's got to be some kind of an issue that we need to examine to understand why that is in terms of the effort that we're putting forth and the results that we happen to be achieving as individuals in our organizations. And so that may be the first element of the controversy that I represent in terms of this focus on winning and this absolute sensitivity to the fact that you have to win in order to be, really effective in this industry. And that's my first measurement. And I really pay attention to that in terms of how I measure people's contribution to the organization. So how do you manage your success? Well, we're all basically familiar with win rate and capture ratio in terms of, the number of bids won and, divided by the, the number of total bids, and the same thing with capture ratio. Money won, versus money, bid. Doesn't matter whether we're talking dollars, euros, or any other denomination, of currency that we really want to pay attention to. And those are factors. To put it in the language of evaluation, those are critical factors that we need to pay attention to in terms of really understanding, why some people are more successful than others, because this is really, again, what I focus on in terms of being able to do that. There are sub-factors that I think we need to pay attention to in terms of determining whether somebody gets an A+ or maybe even an F. And those are things like, especially in procurements related to, government, especially here in the US, competitive range inclusion or exclusion. If your proposal managers aren't making competitive range, that's probably an indication that there may be some significant problem that's related not just to the organization, but perhaps also to the quality of the proposal managers who are actually performing the work. What can we learn about individuals related to customer debriefs and lessons learned in terms of capability and contribution in as far as measuring, people in terms of their performance? And do they have an ability to use facts and data in a way that's really compelling in order to increase probability of winning their proposal? I've discovered over the course of my career that there aren't really that many people who are really good at doing that. They're really good at hyperbole, but they're not necessarily very good at providing the proofs that are necessary in order to be able to get highly evaluated proposals consistently across time. And so we do need to look at that as a critical sub-factor that we need to evaluate. We spend a lot of time in this industry talking about themes and discriminators, and I can probably count on two hands, since I'm not a great mathematician. I can probably count on two hands the companies that I think are really good at doing that, and probably maybe my hands and my toes will complete the domain of the proposal managers that I know who are absolutely in an elite category of being able to use themes and discriminators and communication effectively in proposals. And it's something that I think we don't necessarily pay enough attention to. We treat it as something that is in fact trivial. I don't believe that we are really good at it across our industry. And I think it is something that we do need to pay attention to in terms of trying to understand how people create proposals and how they do them well. Proposal quality. I'm a little bit nuts about proposal quality. I have never in my entire career submitted a perfect proposal. I don't think anybody has. I think it's unlikely that anybody will. But I cannot stand errors in proposals. I think it's critical to eliminate any errors. It's critical to, not have omissions, and consistency in terms of quality has to be there. And we can, of course, judge people on that, as well as we can schedule management and control. Hey, are you meeting your deadlines with your team? And color team product quality. How many times have we all, perhaps gone to a color team review with a document of lesser quality than we really would have liked to? And we shouldn't allow that to happen. Of course, compliance, and then trying to, use, to engage the capture team in a way that requires them to actually produce the artifacts that we need to be successful is another area that we can look at that is critical to performance. But what really matters? Two things: wins and proposal quality. And the one thing I want to really kind of get across here is that success in these areas is not driven by skill. And I know there are going to be people who want to argue with me about that, and that's okay. It really comes down to the personality of the individual engaged in the process that makes the difference in terms of being a consistent winner versus somebody who's simply a proposal manager. And that's something we've really got to pay attention to, because if we are not winning, we are doing a great disservice to our organizations. And personality fundamentally drives success when it comes to winning. And here you go. So it really is the personality that makes the difference. And the answer is yes, because the most successful proposal managers all have similar traits that go way beyond simple objective skills that increase probability of win significantly. And so we've got to understand what some of these personality traits are that are going to make a huge difference in our ability to apply ourselves and win more than we lose across the board in the proposals that we engage in and the proposals that our proposal organizations engage in. And so let's kind of take a look at that and begin to take a look at what really makes a difference in terms of the proposal manager personality, because there is a difference between those who win consistently and those who don't. And I say don't be fooled, because very often what we focus on in terms of hiring people is we look at skill only, and we don't necessarily really assess the personality attributes that are critical to having an organization doing our business development and proposals that's really going to make a difference. And we really have to get focused on some of these personality traits that are going to contribute significantly to making a difference in our organization. I know I focused on them, in many cases, sometimes much more exclusively than I did probing certain skills, because I knew the traits I was looking for in individuals, and everybody in my organization, who achieved the level of a senior proposal manager, for example, had to demonstrate the attributes that I'm going to talk about here for the rest of this presentation. So don't be fooled. You really do need to assess the personality, the entire person, in terms of looking who's going to be among the elite in your organization who are going to produce the results that you want. All right. So what I tried to do with some of this is I tried to create some mnemonics that would help you remember, why the things I'm talking about are really important and how you may be able to apply them in an organized and structured way that will help you not only build your own capability, but also build, the capability within the organizations that you might lead from a proposal or bid management perspective. And number one is this concept of the idea. And the idea, forms around intellect. Let's face it, you got to have smart people. This is one of the hardest jobs there is in any organization. And so you've got to have people, who really, have the brain power to do the complex work that needs to be done in order to be successful. Because there's an integration aspect of this that we'll talk about a little bit later, that if you really cannot do and perform that integration aspect that's critical to overall success in the proposal, you're probably not going to help your organization succeed. And so we really do have to look for people who embody and embrace curiosity, who embody and embrace creativity, and who embody and embrace innovation in all aspects of putting together proposals that ultimately, at the end of the day, are going to have a significantly higher probability of win than they might otherwise have. And then you got to have drive. I can't tell you the number of times that I've walked into organizations, and organizations that should be putting out superior proposals present to me proposal managers who clearly don't have the drive to make a difference in that organization. It is a personality trait that you cannot hide. It is sometimes binary. You either have it or you don't. And the people you're going to hire and put in your organization either have it or they don't. And of course, you need to look for and hire and use those who do, that they have that drive that's going to make a difference in terms of serving the organization and strive to achieve the accomplishment of winning. Because it's not just submitting that's important. Anybody can submit a bid. Not everybody can win a bid. And we want to get focused on how we're going to do that. Energy. You got to be an energetic person. We've all had those times in our career where we've had to work hard, work long, and be productive. And there are certain people who simply have more energy than others. That's simply a fact. And so we want to look for those folks who are energetic, who know how to modulate their energy in such a way that they can go for a long period of time, and use that energy wisely to accomplish the objectives that we need them to accomplish. The other part of that is, if you're an energetic person, you also have a tendency to understand that you want to keep your whole team energetic. And so you will do very simple things like feed them and make sure that they're well hydrated. You take care of them. So it's not just your energy that makes a difference. It's the energy that you can apply across your whole team, that will ultimately make a difference at the end of the day. And you have to be analytical. You have to think. Too often, we don't look at proposal managers and bid managers as thinking engines. And that's what they are. They are thinking engines. We have to have that capability to think through very complex problems, to come up with solutions that are going to produce the desired result, which is a win. And then once you have the idea, you need to focus on some subparts to that in terms of making sure that you are focused on facts and data, because we have to have that hard information, the facts and data that are going to demonstrate very clearly why we should be selected over anybody else. And one of the things I typically find in the proposals that I review is a paucity of the facts and data that will supply that argument as to why we should be selected. It's got to exist. We have to have it. There's no excuse for not having it. And if you have a proposal manager who doesn't understand that, you probably need to find a proposal manager who does understand it and who knows how to operate a proposal in such a way that at the end of the day, it's going to be replete with the facts and data that are going to demonstrate very clearly why we should be selected over anybody else. But it's fact-based. Communication. 90% of all problems associated with a proposal in the course of the development can be traced back to poor communication. Visualization. If you can't draw it, you can't know it. And if you can't draw it and know it, you can't position it for the customer to be able to understand it. That visualization is so critical, and very often proposal managers do not engage themselves in the process of visualization across the proposal that are going to make, that will make a difference in terms of the presentation of why we should be selected. You can't be a really good proposal manager without being a visual creature. I will make that statement, and I'm sure that there are folks who will argue with me about that. And again, that's okay. But that's coming from 44 years of experience in terms of doing proposals, really focused on how, the visual argument can really make a difference in terms of selection. So I'm looking for those people that have the idea and that can translate the idea, visually into things that are really going to make a difference. Value. We talk about value all the time. And it's something that's very difficult for people to wrap their arms around. What is value from a customer's perspective? Precision. I always like to say ambiguity is great in fiction, and it shouldn't exist in a proposal. And yet, if you look at a lot of proposals that get created, there's significant ambiguity in some of those proposals. Imprecision in terms of statement, imprecision in terms of fact, imprecision in terms of approach. And that's when you're going to get some pretty nasty questions from the customer. And so we want to pay attention to that. And then, of course, knowledge in terms of the idea, that unique ability to connect customer need, solution with proof, And then, of course, presentation. Good proposal managers are really all about presentation, easy to read, easy to understand, and easy to score. And they take the leadership role in being able to create that. And if they can't be good proposal managers. The second thing that I look for in terms of broad brushed capability is what I call you have to be an ace. And an ACE stands for attitude, competitive, and efficient. Really good proposal managers have to be positive, powerful, and proactive. Remember those three words: positive, powerful, and proactive. And I can't tell you the number of times I've worked with companies where I've had to work with proposal managers who were not positive, powerful, and proactive. They were negative, they temporized, and they couldn't anticipate problems. That typically leads to a very serious crisis at some point in the proposal. A serious crisis that could be fatal regarding the potential win. And so that's an attribute that all really good proposal managers have to demonstrate: positive, powerful, and proactive. They have to be competitive. You have to want to win. And I've seen proposal managers in organizations, where their desire or will to win is questionable. They're operating in survival mode. I just want to survive. I just want to get this thing done. And then maybe I can go home and maybe I'll get a couple of days off. And then maybe I'll be able to figure out ways that I can avoid doing another one for a while. Not the kind of proposal manager I ever wanted, and not the kind of proposal manager that I believe can make a significant contribution to an organization. And then we cannot discount efficient. Really good proposal managers who are going to succeed are masters of efficiency. There is no wasted energy, motion, or people on a proposal. And in fact, if they have people who are contributing to inefficiency on a proposal effort, those people go away. And they usually go away very quickly. And they are either replaced by people who are more efficient, or they are simply not replaced, and those who are on the team who are in fact more efficient get a little bit more to do. But really good, serious proposal managers are very efficient people. Notice I've not said anything yet, and won't, about people being organized. There's a reason for that. Organized does not necessarily create efficiency. And that's usually what we associate efficiency with, is people who are organized. But it's much broader than that in terms of achieving efficiency across time, money, and resources, because you have to focus on, that positive attitude aspect too, in terms of making sure that your team understands that no challenge that you have is too great to overcome. We're going to confront significant challenges on every effort. I've seen situations where some proposal managers, they just can't rise to meet those challenges. The challenge eventually overwhelms them. No challenge is too great to overcome. I like to tell my teams is that, there's a solution to every problem. We will find a solution. We may not necessarily find the best solution in the time that we have available to solve the problem, but there is a solution to every problem. And that's something that we have to, kind of pay attention to. That powerful attitude of, I will get you through this as long as you help. There are certain things you have to do to help this whole team get through this proposal process, but I can and I will make sure that we get through this together in a way that we're going to have a very positive result at the end. Because I am, and you're going to help me be proactive so that we can anticipate and identify issues and get ahead of them. Because if you can't do that, that's going to create some significant issues downstream in every proposal. And of course, the competitive aspect, we want to make sure we beat the competition. But what I see and have seen throughout my career is that many proposal teams focus so much on trying to beat the competition, they end up beating themselves because they ignore certain signs that are indicative of you're going down a bad path, and you are creating a great opportunity to defeat yourself in this effort. And a lot of times people can't recognize that. We have to be able to recognize that. And then of course, I did, emphasize the concept of efficiency in terms of there can be no wasted time, there can be no wasted people, there cannot be wasted money, and we have to use it in such a way that's going to achieve the greatest effect. And greatest effect is measured in, are we getting appropriate increases in probability of win that will drive us ultimately to an award. And then another concept that I like to call space. Synthesis, position, adaptive, connection, and expansive. Synthesis is that integrative aspect that we need to have as proposal managers. That ability to synthesize large volumes of information that may be disparate, it may have loose connection, but we have to be able to synthesize that and figure out how to use all of that information in a way that's going to increase probability of win in our proposal. It's a very unique skill. It's not a skill that a lot of people have. It really applies to good systems engineers. And if you go out and you look in industry, for example, you won't find that there are really many good systems engineers out there. And that's because there are very few people who are really good at synthesizing large amounts of information and using that information to create a very positive and unique result. And it's a skill that if we want to be among the elite in proposal and bid management, that we have to cultivate. And it doesn't necessarily come naturally. It requires practice, it requires hard work, and it requires attention. And sometimes people just don't seem to be willing to provide the attention necessary to become that great synthesizer who can make a huge difference in the prosecution of that particular bid or proposal. Position. You've got to clearly understand what your position is from the customer's perspective. And I know very often proposal managers have a tendency to want to receive solely that information from an opportunity or capture manager and not apply independent thought to that. And that's a mistake. The proposal manager has to be really the most objective person on the team. And they really need to scrutinize that position from an objective position that will allow them not to necessarily fall into the trap of beating themselves on a particular effort. It's very easy to do. We have all done it. And that's, of course, one of the lessons individually we learn is to make sure that if it happened to us, we don't let it happen again. One of the other challenges that I see that faces many proposal managers that they have to really change their behavior on is they have to be more adaptive. They have a tendency to continue down the same path when everything in the competitive environment is telling us we need to do something different. That's a general human weakness. We tend not to want to do something different, even when all the signs are telling us that that's necessary. So we have to have very adaptive personalities. We have to know when we need to change direction. We have to know when we need to actually dig in a little bit and maintain the direction we're going in, because it is, in fact, the right thing to do. And we have to understand when it's necessary to elevate a particular issue or change in direction in the organization in order to be able to get some help to force the team to change when we know it's the right thing to do and they're trying to evade the change at any cost. It's a very difficult thing to be adaptive, but it is something that's crucial in order to be able to proceed apace and drive towards a particular win. And then, of course, connection. You have to have a very solid relationship with your team. And once again, I've seen, gone into situations where it's very clear the proposal manager did not have a good, solid relationship with their team. And if that's the case, you need to change proposal managers, because we have to have that connection. And then expansive. You have to have skills that go beyond proposal management, that has to go far beyond. You have to be an integral part, in some cases, and have knowledge of pricing. You have to have knowledge of solution. You have to have knowledge of a whole bunch of other things that are going to help you create that superior proposal. And you got to focus on synthesis. You are the integrating agent, like it or not, you are. And that's a role that we have to accept. You're going to have more knowledge than just about anybody else on the team. So you will become that integration point. You have to be able to articulate, really good value from the customer's perspective in order to advance our position. You have to be able to change direction and change quickly and effectively if you need to. Temporizing doesn't help. The proverbial, let's kick the can down the road, we'll figure it out later, doesn't work. Don't do that. If decisions need to be made on a change of direction, we need to make them swiftly, precisely, and with great effect. Your team has to trust you. And it's very obvious from my position when I walk in to help a client or a customer or a proposal team, it's very apparent to me as soon as I walk in the door whether that team trusts the proposal manager or they don't. Sometimes they'll just flat out tell you, and other times it's a little more subtle, but you have to look for those signs. And then, of course, your individual knowledge and capability has to extend far beyond what we would consider to be simple, classic proposal management. You got to be a Renaissance person. It really helps if you have that knowledge, that capability, and experience to be able to weigh in on critical issues that a lot of people are going to think are outside of your purview or place, but you are, in fact, perhaps the most knowledgeable about some of those things as far as the individuals in a particular room or working on a particular proposal. And then you got to aim correctly. Action, interface, and mature. You've got to be a mature person. For action, you've got to be able to define and execute those winning actions flawlessly in the proposal. Because the one thing we don't have in proposal management is a lot of time. And so if we can't define and execute actions that are going to propel us towards a win flawlessly and effectively and efficiently, we're compromising the whole proposal team. And not everybody has the ability to do that. Again, I see it way too often. People incapable of identifying the right actions, people incapable of making the decision, and people incapable of moving the team forward in a timely and effective way on a schedule that's predetermined, and I don't have a lot of time to waste. I can't take a day to decide. I have to decide now, and I have to move now. You have to be the principal interface in the organization. You have to communicate up at the executive level. You have to communicate down, in terms of people who are actually working on the proposal. You have to communicate sideways with peers and others in your organization in order to ensure that we are moving in the right direction. And you have to do that effectively. You are the principal interface point for all of this. And you have to be really good at it. And you can't be afraid of it. I know a lot of people are afraid to communicate up. Why? You're just dealing with people. I know sometimes, we're afraid to communicate down. Sometimes we have to, and we have to be very directive in some cases when we communicate down, which is, this is what I need, this is how I want it, and this is when I need it. What part of that don't you understand? It's okay to ask it like that sometimes. You don't always have to do that, but you have to be able to, to do that, to serve as that principal interface point that's going to make a difference in terms of prosecuting a bid. And sometimes you're going to be a really unpopular person. My boss at CACI used to tell people I didn't come to work to make friends. And there was truth in that. I had a lot of respect for people. I had a lot of respect for people in my organization. I had a lot of respect for people outside of my organization. But there was a job that needed to get done. And we had to get it done in the most effective and efficient way we possibly could. And that sometimes necessitated that I be firm. And you have to learn to do that effectively. And you have to be a mature individual. I once, on an effort for a very large company I worked for many years ago, earlier in my career when I was significantly younger than I am now, we were having a meeting that was absolutely critical to the meeting, and we came out of the meeting, and the admin, that ran all the administrative aspect, for the technology group in that particular company that was responsible for this very large, complex effort. Everybody had proceeded, past her, and I was last, and she stopped me, and she said, it was pretty amazing that you were the youngest person in that room and the most mature. And that taught me something about the necessity of being a mature person in the midst of chaos. Because sometimes that's what it is. It's a little bit of chaos. And you can't be intolerant of immaturity in the room. You can't be tolerant of people in the room who are disrespectful towards others. You can't be tolerant of people in the room who treat others in a way that they shouldn't be treated. You can't be tolerant of people in a room, as far as I'm concerned, who use bad language, which is something I really wouldn't tolerate in any proposal that I ever, ran. It's not acceptable. And so the most mature person, in order to be able to lead this proposal effort to success, has to be the proposal manager. And it is critical. When everybody else around you is acting like a bunch of juveniles, you have to be the adult in the room. Because one time somebody asked me what proposal management was, and I responded with a not particularly bright answer along the lines of glorified babysitting. Because that's what it seems some days. And that may be a harsh comment, but you, as the proposal manager, have to be that person. And there are certain things that you shouldn't tolerate in terms of establishing a mature environment that's going to present the environment that's going to help us win. Because, you get to that and, you've got to get those things done. You have to have established the communication channels. And regardless of your age and experience, you must be the voice of maturity in all aspects when it comes to prosecuting a major proposal. And then finally, just to have a little fun, because we're all familiar with the adage, there is no I in team. Well, there is. And I altered it a little bit. There is an I in team. You are the I, you are the one in the team that has to form the arch. Because that arch really is the bridge between all elements on this proposal effort that are going to make a difference between winning and losing. And that has to be you. You have to be accountable. You have to be responsible. You have to be committed. And you have to be helpful. At the beginning, you have to declare that you are accountable for success here as proposal manager. I am going to hold the keys to accountability. I'm willing to do that. And you have to be willing to do that too. You're not alone in that. But unless you make a solid declaration that I'm going to be accountable and I need you to help me in that, you're not going to get accountability from a lot of other people. And so accountability is an attribute that we have to develop. We have to also say, I'm going to be the responsible person because it's in my attributes to do that. I'm going to make sure that I do plan, organize, control, monitor, execute, and I am going to measure. And I'm going to let you know when we're doing well, and I'm going to let you know when we're not doing so well, and we're going to come up with a plan to do better. How many times has any of us ever worked on a team where we heard people say, gee, it would really be nice if the capture manager would actually hang around and contribute more to this effort? Don't have them say that about the proposal manager. Your teams will respond to your level of commitment. Your teams will respond to your level of investment. Your teams will respond to your presence, and they will respond as well to your sacrifices. It doesn't mean we have to work ourselves into oblivion. But it does mean we have to demonstrate commitment to get others to follow us where they probably don't want to go. And then you have to be helpful. When somebody comes with a question, you either got to have the answer or you got to get the answer, and you got to get it quickly, because you really are the arch that's going to make a difference in terms of being able to create a win. And then finally, something that I would like you to remember is that talent, we can find a lot of talent in various ways, but we can't necessarily find the right attitude or attributes that we need in order to make our organizations truly successful. And all organizations that you work for need you to be one of these people, you know, who is going to be successful consistently. And these attributes are things that I have looked for years in people, and I have found them. And some of those people are the best people I know in this industry. And it really can make a difference in terms of enabling your organizations to succeed and enabling your own individual organizational proposal teams to succeed and your bid and proposal organizations to succeed. So embrace some of these attributes. It is a little bit controversial because I've already made the statement that not everybody has these attributes. Some can be learned and some we come with, and learn to recognize them for what they are and press on and do great things for your organization. And I really want to thank Bhaskar for having me today, and thank you all for participating in this webinar. And if you have questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Eric, this is by far a blueprint for anybody who's looking to hire or anybody who is currently a proposal manager. If they know what are their strengths and what are the capabilities, as you rightly said, that they need to build, is a blueprint. I was gobsmacked within the first 10 minutes of the presentation, and the way you structured it with lots of acronyms it'll be interesting. We will touch that in the Scribble Quest, but let me start with the questions. We did receive a lot of questions. First, thank you so much for the attendees for all your engagement. It's so nice to see some familiar friends joining and also asking questions. So the question at the very beginning, when you mentioned that the important way of measuring success is by the win, and the second one was the quality. The question from Piyush was how the entire onus of winning a proposal lies on a proposal manager, Eric.
Well, I didn't say that the entire onus falls on the proposal manager, but I think, the onus is really on the team. But at the end of the day, in terms of creating the superior proposal, that's going to, score well, that really is the proposal manager. And that's one reason why I'm a key advocate of proposal managers need to be assigned very early in the process. So they just aren't handed a non-winning solution, to that particular solicitation. But my predilection is that if you aren't demonstrating, that you can win, proposals as a proposal manager, sometimes when you are handed perhaps an inferior position to start with, you have to accept that, you really do own a significant, part of that burden. And that's what I'm looking for. And that's what I'm recognizing. I've got to have proposal managers that I have confidence that on these teams, they're going to win more times than they don't. And that's one reason why I like proposal managers assigned really early, because they can have a very positive effect on probability of win by eliminating a lot of inferior performance if in fact they are assigned to capture an opportunity efforts early where they have an opportunity to influence that.
Perfect, Eric. I think that sense of belief of, I am accountable, as you rightly said, is important. Again, follow-up question from LG was, how do you suggest we address that influencing role? How do you think that we can do that, Eric?
Well, I think the best thing is to engage, executive management and your opportunity or capture managers in a way, that demonstrate very clearly how if a proposal manager gets engaged early, they are in fact going to eliminate a lot of problems, because you can run through and go to 5 proposal managers and you can ask them, what are the biggest problems you have in terms of trying to do the things that I just asked you or presented to you in any organization, and they will come up with a pretty definitive list of things that they're not getting from the upfront work that needs to be done. And once you have that, then you can go into the organization and say, look, we need to recalibrate, because here's why, we're probably not winning as much as we should once we get to the, proposal management and development phase, which of course begins long before, the solicitation ever comes out. And so industry tendency is to wait way too long, before a really good proposal manager of the type that I'm talking about is assigned to the effort. So once you have that list of deficiencies that your organization has identified, you can engage in an organizational conversation in terms of how to fix that. And the number one way to fix it is get good, solid, really good proposal managers engaged much earlier in the process.
Definitely, Eric. Thank you for that. Eric, again, it's similar question, similar pattern that comes in. I think Eric kinds of asked us, hey, and I'm a proposal manager, but I've been put into a new account or a new environment. How to gain that trust rapidly when you're introduced immediately as part of the team and say, here we go, take it and run it.
Yeah, that's always kind of a little bit of a problem. And the way I usually, try to gain trust in that is I really try to go to the helpful part of the arch, which really is to try to demonstrate to teams that I'm here to be the truly helpful agent in order to help you succeed in terms of what it is that we're gonna have to do. And oh, by the way, the reasons I think I can be the helpful agent and help you do that is, let me tell you a little bit about some of the things I've had to deal with before in terms of successes, and some of the things, that I've learned in places where, I maybe could have done a better job. And once you kind of begin to approach teams or organizations with that attitude, they seem to be much more accepting when they realize that, yea, verily, you're really good at what you do, but you also can be a little bit fallible, and you're actually still asking for the rest of us really to help you, help ourselves to get through this in a way that's going to have a positive outcome.
Nice, Eric. Thank you. Eric, how important is to have a sense of humor being a proposal manager?
Absolutely critical. You can't, otherwise you're going to drive yourself and others crazy. You've got to have a sense of humor. Not everything is a crisis, and even things that are crises, you kind of have to learn to see some of the humorous aspect of this. A sense of humor is critical towards managing tension in an environment, a very stressful environment. And we all have to learn, how to do that and use humor to offset stress. And there are various ways to do that. Sometimes it's to recognize, sometimes it's just to recognize that we did something really dumb and fess up to it, and let people have a little chuckle at your expense. And then sometimes, there just are things you can do to promote, humor in an environment. You can start your stand-up meeting off with a little bit of humor. I used to, in my staff meetings that I would have with my proposal group, sometimes I would sometimes start the staff meeting, with a reading from the book of Dilbert, because, Dilbert cartoons were just extraordinarily accurate in terms of identifying some of the foibles of humankind in an industrial setting. And you can always use a cartoon, at the beginning of a meeting like that, just to interject a little humor. And don't ignore the value, of having a little pizza break sometimes, and just offering up to folks the opportunity to tell a joke that's not going to be offensive to somebody. Just have a little good, clean, stupid fun. And that can go a long way to reducing tension and stress in the environment, which really, by the way, if you're able to do that, really enhances quality of thought that you'll get from the group.
Totally, Eric. I think there are more questions, more than anticipated. So obviously, you have triggered a lot of thoughts here. Eric, I know we talked about humor and self-belief here, but what are some of the short ways of motivating the proposal team?
I think the best motivation, in terms of working with teams, is to be honest with them. If we're behind, you got to tell them, look, we're behind. We got a serious issue here, and this issue needs to be resolved immediately. And so here's my plan in terms of how we're going to do that. And oh, by the way, we don't have very much time, and I'm going to need everybody's commitment to be able to get this and solve this problem here very quickly. I think that really goes a long way to establishing trust. And I think I think sometimes teams have a tendency, both in terms of the communication aspect, as far as, working up the chain, working sideways and working down, sometimes not to be, brutally honest in terms of where we are as far as our performance overall. And I think once a team begins to sense that proposal managers or capture managers are not being honest about that and not being truthful, it begins a process of demoralizing the team that puts them in a position where they're not going to have a good outcome. So just be honest with a team. And if you've run across a problem and you don't know the answer, tell them, look, I got no idea how to solve this problem. I need you to help me. So we're going to spend the next 20 minutes, we're going to brainstorm some of this, because I know darn right well I am not the smartest person in the room, and I need your help.
Brilliant, thank you. Guys, we will be overrunning by another 5-10 minutes. If the recording will be available, but not very often we have Eric with us. So I'll be continuing with the session. Please do stay if you can. Otherwise, thank you for joining. Thank you. So Eric, can you provide an example of how a proposal team can beat themselves by focusing on the competition?
Well, what happens? Sure. I mean, you see it all the time. We get so focused on beating the competition that what happens is we forget that that we have weaknesses or soft spots in our own proposal that we need to shore up either with facts and data or with a different approach that's going to make our solution or approach to the problem much more palatable to the customer. And so we get so focused then on, well, what's the competition going to do? We ignore where we have our weaknesses and fail to resolve those weaknesses through good proposal management solutions in our own effort. And that's you see that all the time. And we just have to be very careful of that. Sometimes where you'll see it also is it will get so focused on the competition's poor performance in certain areas that we may be able to take advantage of and ghost, is that we have a tendency to forget that we also have some very significant poor areas of poor performance related to our past performance that the customer is probably going to know about, and that we're going to want to make sure that we provide mitigation strategies to ensure to the customer that those things or challenges that we confronted in the past and failed on don't happen again.
Nice, Eric. Nice. Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Jasmine. Jasmine also followed up with, since COVID, the pace of acceleration of remote working is much higher now. Any tips how we can continue to build connections when working with a remote team?
Run that by me one more time, Bhaskar. I don't think I got the front end right.
I think that the question was, any tips on how to build connections when working with a remote team?
Oh, how to build connections within the team? Within
a remote team, especially now we are not based in one office, right, Eric?
Right. That is a challenge. That is a challenge. And I think working remotely, in that degree, is not very much different than when you're working together in an environment where you actually can access people fairly easily. I think, the key to building those connections is actually, conversation, which most people don't like to do. What I've discovered is that the easiest way to get results is to actually have a conversation with people and never communicate by email unless you absolutely have to. We have let our connections devolve to email and texting as opposed to conversation, especially in a remote environment. It's much better to do a quick Zoom with somebody than it is to send them an email. It's much better to have a real telephone call with somebody than it is to try and contact them on WhatsApp, unless you're going to use that to do a call too. You've got to have real conversation with people and use the tools that we have to work remotely effectively to establish that connection that is real and personal and is going to have significant value to the organization well beyond the instant proposal that we happen to be working on. We have to learn to get to know the people we are working with much better in a remote environment than typically we do today.
That's brilliant, Eric. I think, Marty stepped in to answer this question. In your opinion, Eric, what's the difference between a proposal manager and a bid manager, or is there a difference?
Well, I may have to confess a little ignorance there, because, bid manager, is really something that's a much more European term and a commercial term than proposal manager. And if I were to tell you that I know all the differences between working in the US as a proposal manager, or working in Europe as a bid manager, or working as a bid manager in a commercial environment, or working as a bid manager in a government environment, I'd probably be telling a really broad-based lie. And so I think fundamentally, in terms of attributes, there really isn't a difference. I think perhaps in the execution at some of the detailed level, there may be some differences that because I don't and have never really operated in a European environment, I may not understand or know. I am not a commercial person, and so I may not have the direct experience that would inform me on that, but I do understand human nature pretty good. And from that perspective, I think the attributes necessary for each are probably not significantly different.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you, Eric. I think that's a beautiful response. I mean, like that sort of terminology differences on different roles, different geographies, different sectors. I think yes, we could go deeper on that, but end of the day, you know what you have to do as a role. Just get on with it, get the job done. That's nice. So, Eric, I think we are getting more appreciations of your talk here, but there are one or two questions still there. Do you still have a few more minutes, Eric?
Sure.
Eric, let me find the question. So I scrolled it down just to say bye to people. Okay, here it is. Any inputs on reviews, proposal reviews, the bare minimum, and that's required for any proposals?
Run that one by me one more time, Bhaskar.
Any inputs on reviews, this could be performance reviews, I assume, Manu. So any inputs on performance reviews for proposal managers would be helpful.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that is an interesting question. I think if you go back to like the first couple of slides I had, I kind of gave you an outline there in terms of things that you should be looking at when it comes to performance reviews. And the one thing in terms of performance reviews for proposal managers, I think it's absolutely incumbent upon anybody that runs a proposal group. And I did this well sometimes, and I didn't do it perfectly, that's for sure. But I think it really is incumbent upon those of us who have run and will run proposal groups, is that you have a review with the proposal manager, basically after every proposal that they do, and kind of review with them, what they perceived as their own strengths and weaknesses in terms of working on that particular proposal, and then also provide them with any additional insights that you could provide that would be helpful to them in the future in terms of working on proposals, because that's the coaching aspect of being a manager, in terms of actually working closely with people and providing them real-time guidance as much as you can in terms of being able to help them improve their ability to help the organization be successful. So that's one thing that I think you can do. The other thing I think you can do that relates to a performance analysis of proposal managers is remind them never to be afraid to ask for help if they run into a problem, because that's going to give you immediate and real-time insight into what kind of problems that they are running into, and will give you some insight into areas then that you can target to help them improve their skills, and you may be able to help them improve their skills instantly on that particular effort, and avoid some problems that may increase probability of win immediately.
That's brilliant, Eric. Thank you. And I've just posted to the group, such a positive response for your talk here, Eric. Thank you so much. And I've just mentioned, what other topics would you like Eric to dive deeper in the next webinar? Eric, I will absolutely be honored to host you time and time again to share your wisdom, because for many of us here, your experience is not even our age. So it's better to learn how not to do things more than how to do things, and that comes with experience. So I think one last question, I'll take it, and then I will go to Scribble Quest. How to develop capabilities on the solution area with no technical background for proposal managers?
Yeah, and that goes. That is a good question. I figured somebody would come up with that, because I did put a lot of emphasis on it, and it is a challenge for us. And that's, you know, that's one of the things where that's why proposal managers need to get involved in their opportunities much earlier than they typically do. Because, you know, you need to understand, you know, why, you know, we are proposing certain solutions as it relates to a customer problem early in the process. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to help, you know, come up with a communication strategy that's really going to be able to effectively describe, you know, for that customer why we have the best solution to their problem. And the thing is that you do not have to be, you know, a technical person to be able to, you know, assimilate that knowledge, you know, at a high level, and be able to understand, you know, why we are proposing what we're proposing. And the one thing that I try to advise people on is, remember, it doesn't necessarily matter that you're not a technical expert. If you see something up front that looks like it's a dumb answer to the problem, it probably is. I mean, you got to use your own God-given, you know, common sense to recognize that, you know, that, based on the information that you presented in terms of what the customer is really looking for, that solution, based on the attributes that you're telling me that I need to present in the proposal, that solution doesn't solve that problem. And that's going to be something that's just a product of logic, attention, and being analytical. And that's all you need to have is logic, attention, and be analytical. And you're going to discern right up front some issues with the solution, and you may be able to help your, you know, prevent your team from proposing a solution that doesn't really adequately address what the customer laid out as their key issues. You don't have to be a technical expert. You have to have the intellect to be able to look at it, you know, from a logical perspective of, is that really going to work? Because it doesn't seem to correlate with what the customer said they're really asking for.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Eric. Please do drop your questions. You know, let me start the Scribble quiz. This is actually a very, I mean, like, it's not because Eric had a layer by layer of principles of attributes. So let's begin the Scribble quiz. So again, whoever answers quickly gets the prize, but also anybody who tries also gets the prize. So hope you enjoyed the presentation, and let's begin. Question number 1. What really matters, according to Eric, for a proposal manager? There are 2 things that he mentioned, that these are the 2 things that really matters for a criteria for a proposal manager. What are those 2 things? Yes, I think Niloy got the answer. It's wins and proposal quality. But thank you for trying. I was about to ask the second question, which is related to personality, but you guys already made it, because the second question which I had in mind was, skills doesn't drive success. What does drive success? The answer was personality, but you already have got it. So I'm going to skip that question. So the very first, Eric used 5 acronyms all the way through. The very first one that he used is what? For the attributes of a proposal manager, which is the very punchy one. What's the very first one? Idea is the correct answer. Marty, you got it. And everybody else, nice try. So let's continue with the same one. The first one was idea, and the last one was arch. What are the third, the fourth ones? And yeah, the first one is idea and the last one is arch. Can you name the third and the fourth one? ACE is the second one. The first one is idea, second one is ACE, the last one is ARCH. What's the third one and what's the fourth one? Let's see. Good. I think most of you got the answer, but Edith, you get it, and Space Aim is the right one. So Edith, you got it, and Niloy and Amy, good try. Everybody else, good try. I think you all got the. It's not about the acronym; it's the attributes. That we will share the slides. Try to build those capabilities. That's important. This is the last one. This is a tough one. There are 3 P's that Eric mentioned. Guys, he repeated this 3 times. This is the one thing that he repeated 3 times in this webinar. The first one was, out of the 3 P's, the first one was positive. The third one was proactive. What's the second one? You need to be positive, you need to be true, and you need to be proactive. What's the Oh my God, you guys are amazing listeners. Amy, that was absolutely nice. Powerful, nice work, Niloy, nice work, Ayana, nice work, Marty, and everybody else who tried. And also thank you for staying in. I think you will monitor the chat. Thank you for all your engagements. Thank you for all your love and support. Any final questions, we will pick it up now. But if you want to add any more questions, please do add it. Scribble Quest, as always, team will be in touch for the winners, and anybody who joined in, you could continue to have it. Next week, we have a filler session because obviously one of the speakers couldn't make it. So I'll be talking about practitioner certification. So if anybody is considering practitioner, please do drop by. That's next week. And then we'll be back again with a host of speakers again. So on your behalf, I sincerely thank Eric for joining and sharing his wisdom. Very few sessions I get completely emotional with the level of content and with the level of experience. This was definitely one. I hope you enjoyed it. Please do share your feedback, both in the social media and also with us directly, for us to improve and to bring more. Eric, thank you so much for joining. Sharing.
Well, thank you for having me, Bhaskar. I really enjoy doing these. It's given where I am in my career, it's certainly my pleasure to try and give back something to those who are going to follow me.
Oh, brilliant, Eric. Thank you. Definitely. We'll even start a Eric session every month or every 6 weeks or 8 weeks. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you for staying till date. I think this is by far the longest one. Really loved it. Thank you, everybody. Stay healthy. And I'll hopefully see you in the next couple of weeks. Practitioner is next week. Drop by if you're looking for practitioner. Otherwise, we'll be back again every week. Recording webinars will be uploaded on YouTube. Slides will be sent out in the next 48 hours. Thank you from me and Scribble team. Thank you.